day. We will start with our agenda, which is a budget hearing on the Department of Commerce. We'll have Sharday Kane, the fiscal analyst for the Kansas Legislative Research Department, go over that budget with us. Thank you, Sharday.
Good morning. My name is Sharday Kane. I'm going to go over the Kansas Department of Commerce budget. I would note that pages 1 through 6 give an overview of the agency for 2023 through 2025. So I'm going to jump to page 7, where you can find the fiscal year 2024 analysis, but I'm happy to answer questions on anything in the document. On page 7, the agency received for 2023 session, received $191.3 million appropriated, and item number 1 is an SGF reappropriation of about $10.2 million. These funds are derived from the World Cup planning and area improvements, the Advantage Kansas, and the Kansas Semi-Quincentennial Commission funds that were not used in fiscal year 2023, so shifted forward to fiscal year 2024. The agency requests $327.6 million, including $39.1 million SGF in fiscal year 2023, which is an all funds increase of $126.1 million or 62.6% above the approved budget. On page 8, item number 2, this is the pay plan shortfall for an amount of $811. Almost every agency has this pay plan shortfall. This is that our estimates during the process last year with Senate Bill 2025 came under, so this is to make up for the difference for fiscal year 2024. And this has a bill, it's Senate Bill 328, and it has a hearing in Senate Ways and Means right now. Absent the supplemental request, the revised estimate includes an increase of $124.8 million in expenditures. These significant adjustments are as follows. Item number 3 is an addition of $19.6 million in expenditures for the Job Creation Program Fund. Item number 4 is an increase of $7.7 million for the Community Development Block Grants. And item number, I'm sorry, I need to make sure that I have the same numbers as you all. And item number 5 is the apprenticeship program. So that grant total was $7.2 million, but there is an increase of $6.5 million. And you can see that in the chart, not in the words on page 8. Item number 6 is the EDIF funding. The agency adds $2.7 million for EDIF initiatives. Item number 7 through 20 are all items that have been previously approved by either the State Finance Council or the legislature in 23 or 22. However, they are showing up in this budget because they are ARPA funds that have been previously approved. So essentially they are a formality, but I can go over any of them. We're going to move forward to page 9, item 21. Which is a deletion of $43.4 million for federal ARPA funds that have already been expended in fiscal year 2023. And item number 22 is the Tourism, Publication, and Other Sales Fund. There's a deletion in that fund due to not anticipating these expenditures in fiscal year 2024. Item number 23 is the Reimbursement and Recovery Fund. due to the agency not anticipating these expenditures. And there is another $85,900 in all other adjustments that have also been deleted. The governor recommends fiscal year 2024 expenditures of $327.7 million, including $39.1 million SGF and $318 FTE. This is an increase of $50,000 EDIF due to the governor recommending $50,000 expenditures for contractual services for the tourism division. And I can stand for questions on fiscal year 2024 or move on to 2025.
Committee, any questions on 2024? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have two quick questions. I noticed that there's a reappropriation for the World Cup of $10 million. Apparently, we had appropriated that in 2023. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you know why it was not expended? Because they've already come to us and asked for another 38 plus, or 28 plus $1 million. So do you know, we appropriated it, do you know why it's still there? And if you do not know, then we'll let someone else answer the question.
The agreement was signed recently, so the first disbursement of those funds will happen. So basically, after they actually get the money, then they create an MOU, if you will, with the person or entity getting the money, and then that is when the money is transferred to that entity.
I think it's important, Madam Chairman, for us to realize we've already given them 10, and they're asking for 28 more. My second question has to do with, because I am seeing in all these budgets, everybody's dipping into the EDIF, the lottery money, which of course Kansans think goes to schools, and it doesn't, never has. But is it possible, Madam Chairman, and I don't know if I should ask this of the fiscal analyst, to get the information as to the revenue and all the proposed expenditures from EDIF? Because there's only so much money that Kansans are willing to gamble in the lottery, and it looks like we're spending it all plus. Maybe not, and that may not be a question that you have an answer to immediately, but I just thought I would ask because I saw the EDIF funding. They're asking for another $2.7 million in EDIF money, and I've seen that in other agency budgets, and there's, like I say, only so many dollars. So that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And we can make that request to get an overview of all the receipts and expenditures from the EDIF fund. Committee, I'd like to just take a moment and welcome Senator Francisco to Commerce Committee, and we hope that Senator Ware is back soon. So welcome, Senator. Any other questions for 2024? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this is just following up on Senator Peck's question. If all the money has been expended from the EDIF, then are those allocations made from state general funds?
Madam Chair, yes, they are. There have been transfers from SGF into the EDIF in the past.
Seeing no other questions, you may proceed to fiscal year 2025.
And I will send out the EDIF table, and then if you want a breakdown of anything specifically before tomorrow, then I can try to get that for you this afternoon. Page 11 shows the fiscal year 2023 actuals to change to fiscal year 2024, as you can see, primarily due to federal funds, which is the ARPA funds that the agency has been allocated and expending out. On page 12, the fiscal year 2025 analysis begins. The agency requests $163 million, including $131,238 SGF for fiscal year 2025. This is a decrease of $164.7 million or 50.3%, and this is primarily attributable to the conclusion of one-time projects or funding being available. The agency's enhancement requests include item number 1 for the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission in the amount of $500,000, and item number 2 for the film tax credit support position in the amount of $100,000 EDIF and 1 FTE position. Absent the enhancement request, the request includes a decrease of $156.5 million in base budget expenditures. On page 13, item number 3, the Job Creation Program Fund, the agency anticipates a decrease in expenditures in the amount of $8 million for fiscal year 2025. Item number 4, the Community Development Block Grants is a decrease of $5.5 million. Item number 5 is the apprenticeship program, a decrease of $5.8 million. The agency received a one-time federal grant, so that is the decrease that you see in those federal funds moving forward. Item 6 is for all of the one-time projects that were in fiscal year 2024. Item 7 is the Base 2.0 grants that are also one-time funds. Item 8 is the Housing Revolving Loan Program. This was approved by the 2023 legislature and was one-time funding, so there's a deletion there. Item 9 is due to Apex. This was one-time funding as well. And item 10 is the World Cup planning and area improvements, and that is also one-time funding. The governor recommends fiscal year 2025 expenditures of $208.4 million, including $45.6 million SGF and 320 FTE positions. This is an increase of $45.4 million or 27.9% above the agency's fiscal year 2025 revised estimate. The governor recommends 320 FTE, which is an increase of 2 FTE above the fiscal year 2025 agency request. The increase is attributable to the additional 3 FTE positions for business development, and the deletion is the 1 FTE for the film tax credit support position because the governor did not recommend that request. And that is in item number 11. Item 12 is the World Cup. The governor recommends adding 20 million SGF to support the 2026 World Cup Games. Item 13 is for moderate income housing. The governor recommends adding 10 million SGF for the moderate income housing program. Item number 14, the apprenticeship and business partnership. This is 8 million to encourage community and technical colleges to develop new apprenticeships opportunities throughout the state. Item number 15 is for the Swope Health Project, which is a project that will place a Kansas City Public School, Kansas City Community College, and a credit union in one central location. Item number 16 is $2 million for the Housing and Workforce Development Program. This is a revolving loan opportunity to allow high schools and colleges to establish hands-on home construction environments for training purposes. Item number 17 is the micro internship expansion of $500,000 SGF, and item 18 is for higher paths, which is $500,000 SGF to promote career opportunities to junior high and high school students. And I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Sharday. Committee, what questions do we have? Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for going through this with us. Number 10, World Cup planning and area improvements, 10 million. And then you go to 12, and you're taking that away. And then World Cup on 12, you're adding the 10 million. Is that just going in a different silo or something?
Madam Chair, the World Cup planning and area improvements, 10 million from the 2023 legislature is specifically for Sporting KC. The World Cup 20 million request is going to the nonprofit that has presented before the committee over the last couple weeks.
Other questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at the film tax credit support position and reading the explanation. So just want to make sure that this budget would keep the individual, the support position, even if the film tax credit program is not passed into law?
Madam Chair, the governor did not recommend this supplemental request or enhancement request, so this is not included in the fiscal year 2025 budget.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm a little bit not, I guess, understanding. On page 13, you say that the governor adds 20 million for the World Cup, but we've been asked for 28 million or up to 32 million. So why did, and you may not have an answer, I'm asking this for the agency. I'm surprised that if they're wanting 28 to 32, she's giving them 20, unless the previous 10 plays into that total figure. Do you have any knowledge of that you want to try to answer, or do you prefer to just pass that on?
I will pass that along. At the end, I think that this is a policy decision for this committee to make, but I do, to my understanding, it is two separate. One went to Sporting KC, and the other is for the nonprofit specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Sharday. Committee, next we have Rachel Willis, the Director of Legislative Affairs from the Department of Commerce. Welcome back, Rachel.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Rachel Willis, Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. I appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit more about our budget proposals. So first, I just want to say that this really is an exciting time for the state of Kansas when it comes to economic development. And it's been through our partnership with you all, the legislature. Kansas has ranked #1 among all 50 states attracting private sector business investment per capita in 2021 and 2022. Furthermore, the Kansas economy grew by 9.7% in the third quarter of 2023, the fastest rate in the nation. So Kansas continues to be on a strong path of economic development as we kick off the start of 2024. As you know, our office is comprised of business development, community development, the Office of Broadband Development, Work Services, the Office of Registered Apprenticeship, International Development, and Kansas Tourism. On the second page of my testimony, you'll see just some highlights and accomplishments that we're proud of that occurred in fiscal year 2023 and 2024. I won't read those, but would encourage you to look over those. On page 3, this is really information, just kind of highlighting again all the information from Chardane. So we go through our fiscal year 2024 budget and we identify our revenue sources and those amounts. The same thing for fiscal year 2025. And then that last chart on page 3 talks about our agency budget and the governor's recommendations for both FY24 and 25, breaking out by those divisions that we spoke about earlier, and then also including our capital improvement requests there on that last item. So now I'll go ahead and skip over to page 4 and talk to you about our budget enhancements. So this year, Commerce is requesting funding to primarily address workforce shortages across the state. So we've heard from businesses that there is a serious workforce shortages. We need people, we need qualified people. And so we've put together some strategies and we need some resources and further capacity to implement these. So we know that there are more than 45,000 jobs listed on our Kansas work site, and like I said, employers need qualified staff. So through these enhancement requests, Commerce will work with other key stakeholders across the state to really fill our career pipeline. Okay, so first up, the first enhancement I would like to speak about is the Youth Career Explorations. This is a $500,000 enhancement for Higher Pass. This is a grant program that will promote Kansas-specific career opportunities to middle school and high school students. Again, to really fill the gaps in some of those existing workforce recruitment programs that are already in place. So really thinking about how can we get to kids and students sooner, and how can we make sure that they are being exposed to Kansas-specific career opportunities. So over the last 5 years, Kansas has had incredible growth in new jobs and new businesses, and this needs to be shared loudly with all young people to motivate them to take a look in their own community and other communities across the state for an exciting career. So we believe that this initiative will help communicate those options to young Kansans. Next up is a micro internship expansion. So Commerce is requesting $500,000 enhancement to connect students with Kansas employers, again, to really showcase careers. This would be an expansion of a program that the Board of Regents is currently managing. So this will connect Kansas businesses with students attending 2- and 4-year higher education institutes to complete a short-term project. So that's why it's called those micro internships. So it's really based on a specific project that typically lasts 10 to 40 hours. And these projects are typically in the white-collar industry. So thinking about finance, insurance, human resources, marketing, IT, those sorts of things. This funding will help pay for the interns' pay as well as other program operation expenses. We believe that this enhancement really supports both the Board of Regents' strategic plan and our own strategic plan, the framework for growth. The third budget enhancement, so the last one on page 4, is apprenticeship and business partnership. This is an enhancement request for $8 million, and it's a continuation of the allocation that we saw last year to community colleges and technical schools. So $7.5 million will be granted to technical and community schools to help support their apprenticeship opportunities and really to facilitate business and industry outreach and develop that programming that's needed to, again, meet the needs of businesses. The Department of Commerce will keep $500,000 of this enhancement to administer the program and are requesting 3 positions. Okay, we'll turn to page 5. The first enhancement on the top of page 5 is a housing workforce development program. So this is a new pilot program for us. This is a $2 million enhancement request, and it would establish a housing workforce development program through a revolving grant provided to high schools and higher education institutes to support construction costs for housing development. So we know the lack of quality, affordable housing is widely recognized as one of the state's largest barriers to growth and development, particularly in rural and underserved areas. So this program will provide high schools and colleges funding for building supplies, equipment, and training materials, allowing those educational institutions to establish hands-on home construction environment to provide workforce training in home construction. So it'll be startup dollars, again, to fund the cost to construct those initial houses, purchase the equipment, and equip the students with those appropriate tools. It'll utilize the construction, electric, HVAC, plumbing programs to construct houses across the state. We anticipate that the funded colleges would produce at least 1 house a semester and educate approximately 10 students each semester. Upon completion, the houses would be sold on the open market, and proceeds from that sale would return to the initiative to fund future house construction. So this really allows for this initiative to be self-sustaining moving forward and to both have a significant impact on the housing shortage as well as workforce shortage that we see across the state. The next enhancement request is for $500,000, and this is to support the Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission. It's the last one that you'll see described on page 5. This would allow us to expand our activities within this creative sector that are that may currently be restricted through our other funding. So the Arts Commission right now primarily receives funding through the federal organization, the National Endowment for Arts, that also then requires a state match, and those are restricted dollars, so it really limits what we can do. And so we would like to expand our work and develop some other programs without those restrictions, and there's examples of those programs. They're listed on page 5. I think it's important to note that Kansas consistently ranks one of the lowest for funding allocated to the arts agency. So in 2022-2023, Kansas ranked 48th out of the states at 15 cents per capita. Georgia and Wisconsin were ranked lower than Kansas, with both spending only 14 cents per capita. Our neighbors to the north, so Nebraska, they appropriate a little more than $2.6 million for the arts, and Missouri dedicates more than $31 million. So we know that the arts put people to work, that produces tax revenue, it's good for business, and it retains a talented workforce. So the arts foster vibrant communities and create those productive places for folks to live, work, play, and raise their families. So we think that this is an important enhancement. Next on page 6 is the SWOOP Health Project. We're requesting $4.5 million to support the health facility that will be part of the larger project in Kansas City, Kansas. That project is the Kansas City, Kansas Community College Education, Health, and Wellness Center project. So the overall vision for the project is to create a one-stop shop for individuals to seek medical services, financial guidance, education, training, and employment opportunities. So the SWOOP Health Center will create more than 50 healthcare jobs and serve more than 6,000 people annually. It'll offer primary care, dental care, behavioral health, and pediatric space. We know that the eastern half of Wyandotte County has some of the lowest health outcomes in the state and has significantly lagged behind in economic development. So we believe that this grant program that does require a one-to-one match will help address those and hopefully help catch them up. And then last but not least, on page 6 is the World Cup enhancement request. This is for $20 million, and I think we've heard lots about it. I will add that just this last weekend, Sunday specifically, we did learn that the Kansas City region will be hosting 6 matches, so 4 matches, and a knockout match, and a quarterfinal. So wanted to bring you up to speed on that. So I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Committee, what questions do we have? Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2. Just real quick, at glance, the World Cup with the 20 million. I know they had said like we were gonna request 20 million, then something like 32 million. And so is that other amount just coming from SGF and not the commerce budget, or where's that other amount coming from?
Yeah, so the Commerce and the governor are recommending 20 million. So they presented a request, and our recommendation is for 20 million.
Okay, another question. I love Higher Paths. I've known about them since prior to being a senator. I think they do such good work. However, I would like for KSDE to tell us why they aren't funding this. They've been funding it in the past. In my opinion, they need to be the ones funding it still. So I don't know if we can request that of the agency, but I'd like to know why they are passing it off to Commerce. I think it's their responsibility is what I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. And I want to again thank you for all the hard work you do. I want to be nice to you before I ask these questions. In the very first paragraph of your testimony, you talk about the economy growing, and I think it has. And I read in the publications that Kansas leads the world in economic growth. So that's great. However, I went down to the research department because we've talked about taxes a little this year, and I was trying to figure out where in the budget profiles all this economic growth shows up. And I asked a specific question of the research department. I said, where does it show up? And they said, it doesn't. And I said, why not? And then we said, well, we don't think it's creating jobs. I thought, wow. I read in Forbes, we're doing all this stuff. And then I go to the research department and I specifically ask about where the uptake was going to be for the Apex projects. And they said, well, we just, the revenue estimating people figure they're just going to take jobs from other people and there won't be any growth. So somebody needs to get together on that stuff. If we're going to talk about growth that we've had, and I believe we have, I'm not discounting that, then in the governor's profiles, she needs to reflect that growth rather than tell us that we're not growing so we can't cut taxes. I know it's not a subject for this committee, but I think you can lean in on that a little and try to get an answer. Do we not count it until it happens, or what? The second question I have is about if I can, I've got 3 or 4, about the film. So you are recommending that we hire somebody to direct the film credits, even though the legislature hasn't passed that. Am I reading that right?
Yes, Senator, yes, so we, the process for our, I guess to get to this point, is we submit our recommendations to the governor for budget enhancements and things that we would like to see moving forward. And yes, we did submit to the governor an enhancement to support 1 FTE to support that film tax credit in anticipation that we could get it across the finish line. However, that was not approved, so we're not looking for
passed
that.
this committee,
Yes,
and it says setting somewhere. Has it been
the
killed?
House side.
It's setting in the House side. Well, maybe they'll work on that. And I had one last question, and I think it dealt with all this massive. I'm assuming, after I've listened to all this, that the big 126% increase in the budget was simply one-time money that's now gone away, and so you really haven't. It's gone up, but it hasn't gone up to that extent. Is that all right?
Yes, those are largely ARPA dollars and COVID relief federal dollars that were one-time funding that came through our office and have been allocated out across the state.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Committee, other questions? Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to address the question about Higher Paths. That is located in Manhattan. It's one of our one of the members that was previously president of our Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. And I think the question about should it be funded through KSD, I don't know what kind of authority we have as far as making or passing it on to KSD and their budget. But in my opinion, and as I looked at this, as it works in our school district as well as in other organizations, I believe it's an investment for the future workforce. And being a school teacher, and everybody else knows, it's about exposure, exposure, exposure. And sometimes these individuals, these short videos that Higher Paths makes has everything to do with on the field in agriculture, whether it's about the aerospace system, whatever it is, whether it's in STEM programs, it's just putting them in their hands for a few minutes, because we know that students function, this generation especially, are very visual learners, especially with their phones right in front of them. And I think as soon as they get exposed to it over and over and over again, it opens those doors to those jobs that we have in Manhattan or in the state of Kansas, and we want them to stay here. So in my opinion, I think this would be an investment in the future workforce as far as commerce is concerned. So I'm not sure that it belongs in KSD, because they often deal with the curriculum standards and what they need to function as far as their teachers and all of the content that they have to manage within the school districts. To me, this is not only in the school district, but even outside of the school districts within our communities. So I support this recommendation, and this is my experience with Higher Paths. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, I did have a question about the apprenticeship and business partnership. This is something that's new to Commerce, correct?
Yes, this would be something new to Commerce.
And is it not being taken care of somewhere else currently?
So last year, the allocation for the 14 million went through the Board of Regents. And so this year, this allocation would come through the Department of Commerce.
Okay, you just said 14 million, but you're asking 8, so we're reducing funding?
No, sir. My understanding was that it was originally just a one-time funding opportunity, and since the I guess, expansion and the success of the apprenticeship program and the need that we continue to see for workforce shortage, we felt like we needed to work to continue this, and $8 million was an appropriate amount.
14 million, cut to 8, cut by another 500,000 that you're going to skim off the top for administrative, correct?
Yes, Commerce will use $500,000 to administer the program.
Well, Madam Chairman, we may have some further discussion about that down the road. Thank you.
Any other questions, committee? Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to make a comment about Higher Paths, and I know two of our committee members are very familiar with that program. There is no data. I've been trying to do a little bit of research on this. There's no data as to how many students have received the opportunity to view the videos and what that return on investment is. So whether it's approved through KSDE's budget or Commerce budget, I sure would like to have some sort of data so we know what kind of an impact it's making, for not just the anecdotal data. I think that would be important. That's all. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, Rachel, I do have one on the SWOOP Clinic Health Project. Where does it get the name SWOOP from?
Yes, so my understanding is that the SWOOP Health Project, SWOOPS is a health facility. It's like a community health center organization, right? So they already have, I believe, 21 established sites. So if I'm remembering correctly, 19 of those are in Missouri, and then there's one here in Leavenworth, and then the future site would be here in Wyandotte County. So it's just the name of the business.
Okay, thank you. And is that a private organization?
I don't know if it's private or nonprofit. I can get that answer for you.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is, will abortion services be provided at this clinic?
I'm not. I don't know. I'll follow up.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Rachel, and we'll look forward to those responses. Appreciate it. Committee, next we have Heather Morgan, Executive Director of Kansas Community Colleges Association. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just provided you a little bit of testimony to give some context to this committee. Higher ed usually doesn't come before the Commerce Committee for our budget, so I didn't want to come in cold and just jump to the one thing. Kansas Community Colleges are serving over 90,000 students. We've got about another 30,000 non-credit students who are never counted in the Board of Regents enrollments. We are really focused on meeting the business and industry needs of our state. About 80% of our students are part-time, so most of our students are working and learning. 70% of the education delivered for technical education, the state is delivered by community colleges. And we receive, community and technical colleges receive no state aid for any non-credit training programs that we do. Kansas Business and Industry continues to request more and more things that are credential and credit, non-credit focused, stackable credentials, or quite frankly, they just need the employees to have the skills that they need to go into the workforce to be immediately productive. I want to just touch on the Kansas Promise Scholarship, which was the first two-year sector scholarship that you all created that allows Kansans who are studying in our most in-demand fields in the state to go to a community or technical college debt-free. Covers tuition fees, books, supplies. We had 1,100 Kansas Community College students last year study in information technology, early childhood, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare. That program is working, and we're really appreciative of your support. We are also working with our correctional facilities to do correctional education, to give those residents the opportunity to gain skills to hopefully, when they are released back into our community, get good jobs and never come back to the Department of Corrections again. We also did an economic impact study this summer. Just wanted to include it for the Commerce Committee. The Kansas Community Colleges have about a $6.7 billion economic impact across the state. Very, very good taxpayer return on investment. 80% of our students are from Kansas initially. About 70% of them are staying in Kansas, and we do have a lot of schools along the borders. But focusing on what you're here for today with the business and industry apprenticeship funds, last year, we received $14.3 million from this legislature. It was not intended to be one-time funding at all. It was never discussed as that. The $14.3 million is to help the community and technical colleges do business and industry partnership and do the training that business and industry is asking us for, which we do not receive state aid for. We are also able to use that funding to expand programs which were at capacity. So some of our most in-demand programs, you cannot cram, I guess I'll use that word cram, you cannot cram extra students into a welding laboratory. It is not safe. So we needed to expand some programs. CNC manufacturers is one of the other areas. Automated engineering technology is what we call it. Also, healthcare expansion. Our healthcare providers were telling us that we didn't have the programs that they needed, and our students couldn't always use the equipment that they were using in the hospitals, so we needed to get some more equipment for that. So we use this funding for increased industry outreach, some equipment, expanding programs, and then apprenticeships. Not every business wants to do an apprenticeship. There's a lot of hoops and regulations and rules. So if a business says, I want to do an apprenticeship, we use this funds to help us set up that apprenticeship. If they say, I need customized training to connect one widget to another, we do that. So what we would like to ask of this committee is to add $6.8 million back to the $7.5 million that the governor has in the budget that would actually go to the community and technical colleges, and that money would be distributed as it was last year by the number of full-time equivalent students at each community and technical college, and I can provide that table if you'd like. This money is impactful. It helps our colleges actually be reimbursed for what we're doing that Kansas business and industry is telling us they very most need. One quote that I included in your testimony has to do from a student at Hutchinson Community College. They said they felt like Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when they got into the apprenticeship program. That was their golden ticket. They got a job, were able to get education without any cost to them to support their family and get the skills that they need to progress into a higher employment job. Those are the success stories that we need to talk about. That's education that happens without any student debt, and it's what Kansas business and industries need. So we would request that you put the money back in the budget as it was last year and continue that money forward distributed by FTE student. With that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Heather. Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your testimony, there is a graph, so that's what you're.
Wonderful.
And you're suggesting that it be put in the commerce budget.
We have no problem with it being in commerce. We just want to be very clear in the budget how it's going to be distributed by FTE students, so there are no surprises later.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I heard you explain some of this program, and you talked about businesses wanting a training to put widgets together, which actually happens in Lawrence, Kansas. We have the Peasley Tech Center. Are those students that participate in those programs full-time equivalent? Or are they, how are they taking the classes?
So Peasley Tech is not a Kansas post-secondary higher education institution, right? So they are not included in these full-time equivalent students. They mostly get their things through the Department of Labor.
Okay, so that's not my question.
Okay.
So my question is, when you're distributing the money, because I'm aware of the programs at Peasley Tech, and I understand that they're not part of the system, and they do not have full-time equivalent students. They don't count it that way. So I'm saying, how many of these programs, or how many of these programs are programs for full-time equivalent students that you're setting up in businesses? Does that make sense?
I think what you're saying, we calculate a full-time equivalent student based on 30 academic hours. And so because customized training doesn't do it that way, this was the fairest way to distribute it. But almost all the programs we're doing for business industry don't count students in this way. This is sort of an approximation of big to small.
So if I may follow up, then do all the technical schools, community and technical colleges, do they all have similar programs for businesses?
They all have different programs for businesses. Some colleges may have a stronger program in welding. Some colleges may not have a nursing program. So it varies across the state by what programs they have, and they all have different technical programs. But the mission of Kansas Community Colleges is to meet the needs of our businesses. And so if we don't have it, we partner with somebody else down the road that does have it to meet that business and industry need.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when we look at the Commerce recommendation, there's that $500,000 for administration. So previously, it went through the Board of Regents budget, I believe, and we didn't have an issue with the administration.
Correct.
So what are your thoughts on that?
We have no position on the $500,000. I think that's a policy decision for you all. We will be happy to collaborate with Commerce, to coordinate with the Office of Apprenticeship, to do any reporting. If they need staff for that, that's fine, but it didn't have any administrative costs on it last year.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you got the full $14.3 million to use for the apprenticeships?
The $14.3 million passed through the Board of Regents without them taking anything off the top.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you so much, Heather, appreciate it. Committee, I will draw your attention to written-only testimony from the Kansas Public Broadcasting Council. Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you. I do have a question on them. Are they here at all?
Are they in the room? The Kansas Public Broadcasting, I don't believe so, Madam Chair.
Madam Chairman, I listen to the station, I watch the station, and I'm going to recommend that we strike all their funding. I sent a program, it disparaged you in great detail, and I was completely offended by it. And so I am absolutely going to recommend that we strike their funding. They're using it for political gain, political purposes, and that is not what it is about, PBS. And like I said, I watched the programs, otherwise I wouldn't have seen it. And I listened to the station, and I was just completely distraught over what they did and how they are using their microphone for negative promotion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
So noted. Committee, any other comments, questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on that, I heard the word watch. I know that the Public Broadcasting Council does have both television and radio. Was this limited to a particular station or to television or radio?
Senator Tyson, you care to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will be striking all funding for PBS, asking for support on the committee on that, for state funding. Like I said, I listen to them, I support them, but you should watch the program and how they disparaged the chairman.
Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that in this Commerce budget, or is that in SGF funds, or where's our funding for that program?
Sharday.
Madam Chair, the Public Broadcasting Council has received $500,000 EDIF from the Department of Commerce's budget in the past, and it is in the request.
Thank you, Sharday. Any other questions or comments? We will close the budget hearing for the Department of Commerce. Committee, thank you. Tomorrow, we will be having recommendations and discussion on this budget, so please come prepared. Thank you. We are adjourned.